Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another post-game instant live reaction show here on the Toronto Sports Rush Network. The Toronto Maple Leafs have just lost to the Ottawa Senators 4-0. My name is Kyle Andrew. I am joined by the head NHL network analyst, Mr. EJ Hradek. EJ, if you will indulge me, I would like to begin tonight's show
Go
with
right ahead.
A little story.
Go right ahead.
So it's April 18th, 1963. Jetta Grotefend, a 42-year-old tightrope walker who was once part of the Flying Wallendas, unfortunately fell 65 feet to her death doing a show at the Shrine Circus in Omaha, Nebraska. Also on that day, a newspaper article came out predicting that one day we would have phones in our pockets. And of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs defeated the Detroit Red Wings 3-1 on April 18th, 1963, the last time they won a playoff hockey series in 5 games or less.
Yeah,
what is going on here?
I was a wee lad. I mean, I don't know really what to say. I mean, it was a disappointing performance, that's for sure. And we have to give the Ottawa Senators credit because, I don't think they played all that well in game 4, but they found a way to win that game in overtime, just like the Leafs found ways to win games 2 and 3 in overtime. And they came in this game, and I thought they dictated the pace and the tempo throughout the game. If they had a little bit more luck, they would have had a lead in the first period. The puck kind of was right on the goal line, and Morgan Riley was able to tuck it back under Stolarz.
Yeah.
There was another play at the net where I think it was Tanev was able to take it out of harm's way when it was right near the goal line. So I just didn't see the urgency necessary to close out the series, Kyle. I know a lot of people talk about the killer instinct, and this team, it's been a struggle over these years in the playoffs. And anytime they have these things build, right? And you just referenced 1963, which was, I believe, 62 years ago, right? I mean, like, you would have thought that the Toronto Maple Leafs, an original 6 franchise, would have won a playoff series in 5 games somewhere along the way in the last 62 years. So it just didn't seem like they had that killer instinct and that urgency. They didn't dictate the pace. The first period was scoreless. The power play has kind of come up dry now after being dynamic in the first 3 games. I think it was 5 for 9 in the first 3. The last 2 games, 0 for 7 and -2. Another shorthanded goal given up tonight. Terrible pass by Matthews. Awful back check by Nylander. I mean, just skate to the bench if you're gonna drift back like that. I mean, this is the playoffs, man. I mean, I'm watching the Ottawa Senators. They're busting it all over the ice. And maybe the Senators, down 3-0, they're loose. They're playing, they have house money now. Nobody expects them to win. But they're getting better. Their confidence is getting better. Their defense is playing better. Their goaltender is playing better. So now we're in it. The Ottawa Senators going back home for game 6. The pressure starts to mount on the Leafs, but I just think that, for first and foremost, the big boys, they've got to do more. I mean, Matthews, Marner, Nyes, all -4 tonight. Nylander, I think, -3. Matthews came in on a 2-on-1 in the second period, Kyle. He had a lot of room on the off-wing side in the circle. I mean, just rip it under the bar and be done with it. He misses the net. I mean, it's just, this is a guy who scored 60 last year and is one of the great goal scorers in the game, at least hit the net.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't their night in a lot of ways. But you got to give the Ottawa Senators credit because they played well. And that's Sanderson and Clevin back on defense. Those guys are big, strong defenders, and they're playing well.
They were fantastic tonight. They have completely shifted the momentum of this entire series now. You talk about Austin Matthews coming down, just rip it. Yeah, you were the best goal scorer on the team. You should do that. Then you have a play, and he was stick check Lorenz not getting a shot off in alone when he had deked out Ullmark in front of the net there. You have to finish that. You have to finish that. Stick check or not, get your stick to it quicker, heavier on the stick, heavier on the puck, whatever it is. But there was a litany of mistakes out there. They took some undisciplined penalties. I was particularly turned off by Riley's cross-check from behind, a completely unnecessary play in that moment. Could have lightly pushed him. But we can go over these superlatives and these stats and these They're now 1-13 in series clinching games since 2018. They're 2-15 since 2004, which means there was a massive window in there where they weren't even on the brink. And
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately, as silly as it feels to say these things, this is the narrative around this team now. And I can't imagine the city is in anything but full panic mode.
Well, I mean, the fans have seen this movie before in
Yeah.
different forms. Right now, they're the favorite. They're the division winner. They're playing a
Mhm.
team that is a young team, but a good team, and a team that's gonna only get better in the Ottawa Senators. And you want to put those kinds of teams away. And just think about it.
Yeah.
They hit a goal post in overtime in game
Yes.
4. If they score, the game's over. They win the series in 4 games. That's why you got to put your foot down and finish these games off. So now Ottawa has some life. But, people will say all the pressure is on the Leafs. And there is a lot of pressure on the Leafs. But let's face it, the Ottawa Senators aren't here to lose.
No.
And I mean, they feel good about playing. They're going into their building. A lot of people maybe would expect them to win at home in game 6. So this goes back to what we've talked about all year. And we're going to find out if there's been a change within this group under Craig Berube and with some of those new people and new personnel in that locker room. Because there is going to be a lot of noise. We're talking about it right now, and the fans are going to talk about it. It's going to be in the papers. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be on TV. It's going to be discussed. There's no question. The bottom line is, can they, over the next 24, 36 hours, put it behind them, get ready for a better effort in Ottawa, a place where they won game 3, and they easily could have won game 4. And as I said, I thought it was their best game of the series, and they ended up losing in overtime. So that will be the challenge for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, if they don't win game 6, they do come home and they get one more shot at it. The pressure will mount. But at the end of the day, we're going to find out, are these guys any different with this team, with this personnel, with this coach, or is this the same old story? And I dare say, if it is, and they have a monumental disaster of a series loss, I mean, you could expect, many changes in the offseason. But, that said, we're not there yet. And, this is a team that has shown all year, we've talked about it, they've been a little different. So now we're going to find out.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is, you made a great point there. We have discussed this on numerous occasions, how well this team bounces back. And I'm not going to include the game 4 loss in a game in which you need to bounce back, because as you said, arguably their best game of the whole series. And they only lost that game to go up 3-1 going back home. That's a great position to be in.
Yep.
Even a loss tonight could have been taken a little more in stride had they not looked so bad in doing so. They did not look good tonight. And now it's going to test Berube's ability to return these guys to their horse blinders and get back on track and play the game they've played all year, because they haven't lost 3 times in a row very often. I can't even recall, maybe once, maybe twice this season did they lose 3 in a row. But it's the playoffs and it's different. And there's a part of me kind of chuckling at it has to be like this for them. There's no other way. Statistically, we know this.
Yeah, well, it would have been nice to see more urgency from the get-go tonight.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, Ottawa had played very well in the game. And they've got some, like Jake Sanderson and Tyler Clevin and Shabbat. I mean, these guys are all high-end defensemen. I mean, Shabbat's been in the league a while. Yeah. Sanderson, you saw what he did in the 4 Nations. He's coming into his own. He's going to be a star player. And Clevin is a big, strong kid back there and plays hard. They get good contributions from Zub as well. And, the other defenseman, Jensen and Matapalo. This is, they're just playing better. They're playing with confidence. They're moving their feet. They're playing a little bit loose. We'll see if they can continue to do that. I think the most interesting thing is the change on the power play, Kyle, because let's face it, they won. They took a 3-0 series lead on the back of 5 power play goals. And they've got Zippo from that power play, 0 for 7 in the last 2. And as I mentioned, they gave up 2 shorthanded goals. The thing I noticed, the biggest difference is the Ottawa Senators are much more aggressive, killing penalties over these last couple of games. They were passive. They were staying back in the box, and the Leafs were whipping the puck around. They were winning faceoffs and scoring, relatively quickly off faceoffs, but Travis Green and company have made the adjustments. Now it's up to Craig Berube and those power play performers to go to the drawing board and look at the tape and say, okay, Ottawa's much more aggressive. We need to get the puck off our stick quicker. We need to make quick passes. We need to kind of create situations where we can create 2-on-1s around the net and get different shot opportunities. So I think they're going to have to take a look at that and take a little bit of a different approach. A playoff series is always about adjustments back and forth. The Senators have made some. The Leafs are going to have to make some now.
Do you think that the Leafs will stick with the 5-forward power play? Because arguably the shorthanded goal on that pass by Matthews tonight may not have happened had they had actual defensemen on the ice.
Well, perhaps, but I think it was really successful for them. So I do think it's something they'll consider, right? I think that Craig Berube and the coaching staff and the leadership group will, that'll be something they think about. But you can't be giving up shorthanded goals. And I mean, that was a backbreaker in the game tonight. It was a 1-0 game. You think, oh, they're on the power play. This is an opportunity to maybe get the game tied. And instead, Ottawa races down the ice and ends up scoring it with, and that kind of put a dagger into the Leafs. There was still time left, and they had some opportunities. Matthews, I think, hit a post, and they had some other opportunities around the net, but they couldn't score. I mean, sometimes games go like this, but I just look at it, Kyle, this way. I just don't think at the start of the game this team had enough urgency in their game, and the Ottawa Senators knew this was it. They had to win or they were going home. And sometimes that's an advantage in these type situations. And, I think what Toronto tried to get to that as the night went on. But it just looked to me that Ottawa just had a little bit, they dictated the pace, and they could have scored, a few more. If it wasn't for Stolarz, he made a brilliant stop on Brady Tkachuk early in the third period. That would have been 2-0. He made a couple other good ones. I guess there's been some discussion of whether or not the Leafs should think about going to Joseph Woll, with the idea that you can bring Stolarz back if you need him. I don't know. I mean, Stolarz hasn't been the problem thus far. But again, in that room and in in with it, the coaches and the goalie coaches, they're the ones who know how Anthony Stolarz is feeling right now. So I guess that'll be fodder for some conversation. For me, I don't think Stolarz has been the problem. I just think they have to play better in front of him.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have it in my notes from the game that he has not been the problem. The 2 goals that went in off him tonight, like he didn't see the first one until it hit him in the arm, and probably still didn't see it. And the second one he had no chance on. And then there was 2 empty net goals. It's not a Stolarz issue from what I see. And I don't know if I mean, it's up to them to shake up the goaltending right now, but it's not like he gave up 5 bad goals. And he did. The only reason that game was even close late was because of that big stop on Tkachuk. He made big saves. The Leafs didn't. Allmark stopped everything he saw, but he wasn't particularly tested until a little bit later in the game, to the point where Ottawa had played so well, as you'd mentioned before, so many shots from distance by the Leafs. It's just they've gone flat at a horrible time, and there's still plenty of time to correct it. They're still the only team that can win the series on Thursday night, but that's a tough building to go back into when you've completely lost the momentum of a series.
Well, I mean, it's, like I said, this will be up to Craig Berube, the coaching staff, the players in that room to get ready, prepare themselves for the next game, and to come out, and right from the drop of the puck, be ready to play and try to dictate the pace of the game. I mean, the Ottawa Senators, they'll have, obviously it's their home building. There'll be some Leaf fans in the building, I'm sure, as well, as there always are. But, listen, the Leafs played good there in the 2 games in Ottawa. They've got to prepare themselves to play better and from the start of this game. And I think they've got to look at adjustments, whether they change that power play and go back to a defenseman out there, or just change the approach, because the Ottawa Senators, like I said, their penalty killers have been much more aggressive. They're really pushing the Leafs and forcing them to move the puck quickly. The Leafs have to be crisper in that situation, because you can play that kind of game, killing penalties, Kyle, if you want to be aggressive. But the way to beat it is just to complete 2 or 3 quick passes, because if you do that, you're going to create a 2-on-1 in a really good place on the ice. So they're going to have to look at the tape and make some adjustments. We'll see what they can do.
Yeah, and you talk about the lack of urgency coming out of the gate in these games. It does seem to be a key to the Leafs' best performance is that early momentum. They do seem to rely on it a lot. A lot of the games they've won and looked their best, they have scored in that first 10, 12, 15 minutes of a game. Another stat to take note of, the last 7 times they've gone scoreless through 40 minutes, they've lost. They don't play well from behind in the third period. They don't play well with a low goal total in the third period.
I would say this, urgency. Kyle. I would say this. Most teams don't.
Yeah, yeah, fair
If
enough.
you don't
Fair enough.
score
Yeah,
in those first 40, usually you're in trouble in the game. I mean,
that's
that's
right.
kind of the way it goes. I would look at that goal. That first goal was such a critical goal in the game, right? Because it was scoreless in the first period, and it was just a simple offensive zone play. And it was
Mhm.
the kind of play the Leafs were scoring on earlier in the series.
Yes.
And it was a face-off win. And then the puck came up high to Shabbat, and a little bit of interference. I think it was Cousins got a piece of Marner, and Marner couldn't get there. And then Matthews was kind of in between. He lost the draw. He was like down low, but almost screening. And then there was the screen in front of the net as well, with McCabe was tied up with one of the Senators in front. And as you said, it kind of Stolarz could never find it, and it kind of hit his arm and went in. So, those are kind of plays. I mean, early in the series, they were the ones that were making those plays. In this case, the Senators made it. Give them credit. They won a face-off. They got it to the point man. They interfered just enough to allow the point man to get a shot, and he hit the net. I think that's, the other
Mhm.
thing too is, there were some opportunities tonight, as I pointed out earlier, where they didn't hit the net. And you mentioned the Lorenz play on that. Look, great play by Stolarz. It was a quick up. It looked like it was going to be a 2-on-0. Ottawa hustled back, so it was really Lorenz against the goaltender. And he just, Lorenz is not a goal scorer, right? He's a
No.
fourth line player. He took too long
He
and
should have shot
allowed
the
for
puck.
this. Yeah, I should have. At some point in time in that situation, you have to know that you're gonna feel pressure,
Yeah.
because that's again where the Senators played well tonight. The Senators, they hustled to get back. They were moving their feet like anything less than full effort getting back there. And maybe Lorenz goes around and tucks it in. And
Yeah.
on the shorthanded goal against, I mentioned it earlier. Like, I don't want to pick out William Nylander, but I mean, that back check is just not. I mean, I know you might not have got there, you might not have made it there, but you can't predict what's going to happen at the other end of the ice. So the best thing to do is flat out fly as best you can down the ice and try to get there. It just looked like he gave up on the play. So those are the kind of things that we watch the game, we notice. At the end of the day, maybe it wouldn't have mattered. But
Yeah.
with the Ottawa Senators need to move their feet tonight. They were moving their feet. They were getting there. They were keeping pucks out of harm's way as best they could. I think the Leafs could have been better at it.
Yeah, you'd think if you're Nylander in that position, as you stated, you would go harder simply so that people like us are not now talking about it. You can at least give the appearance of full playoff effort. But I mean, that's not, it's hard to say. Let's not blame that on why they lost the game either. That was just
no,
one
it
of
wasn't.
many
I'm just
errors.
pointing out the different moments in the game. Like, the game
Totally,
is full of
totally.
moments. And, listen, if they don't give up a shorthanded goal there, it's still only 1-0.
That's
And
right.
you don't
That's
have to
totally
rush to
valid.
pull your goalie. And maybe you can do that a little bit later, and you could set yourself up. And then maybe you only need one shot to tie the game. We've seen that happen. When you go behind two, especially with a shorthanded goal against, it's painful. So listen, that was just one play.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think when I look at it, I think about this game, I think the Ottawa Senators, this was obviously a team that was on the brink of elimination, and they played that way. And the Leafs were a team that looked like they had another game or two that they had to play with here. And that's a dangerous way to play. The teams that go on to win, Kyle, they finish the job, and they finish it as soon as possible. So now the Leafs have, they've got a tiger by the tail in Game 6.
We talked before the playoffs at how the Leafs need that moment that assuages the fans, just lets everyone know. And they've had two chances to show some killer instinct right now, and they were real close in Game 4. They were awful tonight. A big road win Thursday night would go very far in showing how Berube's changed this hockey team.
Yeah, no, just no question. I mean, listen, they've got to get the job done. I mean, there is, what do they say? Like, there is no tomorrow, right? There really isn't for this team. I mean, they can't lose this series. I mean, it would be, it's beyond a disaster, at least from a sporting standpoint, to be in the position they were in. So there is no tomorrow. I mean, I think they should go into Ottawa with the idea that we must win this game. And again, prepare, look at the tape, make the adjustments, and then just, flat out play. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I watched. Like Claude Giroux is into his late 30s now. He was moving his feet. He was buzzing out there. And I think, again, there's something to be said for playing loose. The Senators are playing a little bit loose in that nobody's expecting them. It's everybody, it's us against the world right now. Everybody's counted us out. Teams go through that all the time in the different locker rooms in these series when you get behind like this. But, they're moving their feet. And I think the Toronto Maple Leafs have to get to that part of the game and just compete harder. And if they do that, they should be okay.
One thing I found very impressive about Ottawa tonight, and it's kind of been a change over the last couple of games with them too, but very much so tonight, there was no space for the Leafs when they had the puck. Ottawa was hustling. They were all over them. And the Leafs, on the other hand, they looked a little bit listless, a little bit lost out there, a little all over each other. And that's fine. Those are all correctable issues. But if Ottawa continues that sense of urgency, and it's all about the sense of urgency now, goals and assists and all that stuff, it doesn't matter on the score sheet. The urgent team is going to win these games. The team that comes out ready and loose. Ottawa's playing from behind, but they're playing much looser than the Leafs right now.
Yeah, and they can because, people have kind of counted them out. They're playing loose, but they're playing with purpose. And like I say, they're moving their feet and they're defending the right areas of the ice and their goaltender is playing better. I mean, those are all the things that are playing into it. So we'll wait for game 6. We'll have a lot of discussion. There'll be a lot of stories written online in the paper. They'll be discussing on television. The fans will get ready for the game for game 6. I mean, it should be a great environment in Ottawa. This is why we love sports, right? Is the challenge. And, some teams they've met that challenge and, they've gone on, they've won, then they try to repeat. Then it's another story. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, what is it? Now you said it, 1-13 in games they can clinch. So that's the narrative right now. So they have to find a way to flip the script. And the best way to do it, get back, examine the tape, go through, make adjustments, get yourself mentally prepared for the next game and to be ready to play when that puck drops. That's it.
Yeah, you have to wonder too, like the way they're playing in the sense of urgency they require right now. Too, looking ahead, Florida is now in command of their series as well, and they're playing like the Florida team we're used to. There's like there was a play early in the game tonight. The Leafs are on the power play. After the whistle, Nye shoots the puck. It was loud. They couldn't really hear it. Pinto goes after him, and Nye decks him and takes the penalty. Now, I originally had in my notes, because it was early in the game, that I didn't absolutely hate that rough play because of the way Florida's been playing and stuff too. But I almost now wonder, in hindsight, killing that power play momentum and switching the game to 4-on-4 there, how much did that affect the Leafs' ability to get out early? Like, I thought, if they're going to play this style of rougher game, there's been 3 homicides in the Florida series. It's one of the roughest brands of hockey I've seen in quite some time. So I thought maybe they were prepping for that, but it turns out that may have killed some power play momentum.
Well,
the power play
to be fair, I think there was a slashing penalty in front, and that's when the whistle was blown. So there was already a penalty. Right. When he shot the puck, Pinto reacted because, in hockey, if you shoot a puck at a guy who's very heavily padded and probably will not get injured under any circumstances, still, you have to make a statement like you can't do that. And Pinto went at him and Nye just put him right on his backside. But in the end, the penalty had already been called. But, those were things in the game, right? They had a power play opportunity and they end up taking a penalty. Those were things that it just wasn't their night. Another thing to think about, Kyle, last year, the Florida Panthers, they were up 3-0 against the Edmonton Oilers. They lost the next 3 games. They came home. Talk about pressure. I mean, the Stanley Cup in the building. The Stanley Cup was in the building for 4 consecutive games. Florida lost 3 of them, and they managed to win the final game and win the Stanley Cup. But there's 3 players in that Leafs locker room that were part of the Florida Panthers last year.
Yeah.
And they're veteran guys that have won Stanley Cup, and one of them is their goalie. So I would say those are things that are helpful in the room, just like it's helpful to have Craig Berube, who has guided a team to a Stanley Cup and has seen the ups and downs in a series, because a playoff series, it's very rare that a team can go through 4 rounds and face no adversity. There's a little adversity now. Let's face it. And if it wasn't the Leafs, if this wasn't the narrative about this team, people wouldn't make quite as big a deal of it, but it is. And so now there'll be a lot of noise. We'll see if they can overcome that and put together a really strong performance in Game 6 and win the game and get on to the next round.
And given that narrative as well, too, they might be better off on the road. Like, given what's the tone in the building tonight towards the end of the game and, the media, the way it's going to be, the cycle for the next 48 hours, they can go out loose in Ottawa. They might be better off in the other building, get an early goal and settle down maybe. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but for them to get out of the first round, maybe that's the way it needs to be. But
hey, listen, there's adversity for everyone who moves through the playoffs. It's very rare that you get through there without any issues at all. I mean, the Florida Panthers, I think they were trailing the New York Rangers 2-1, and they were in overtime in Game 4 in their own building. So, I mean, they were in a situation they could have fallen behind 3-1. They ended up winning that game, tying the series, and winning that series going on to the Cup final. And as I just explained, the adversity they had in the final. So that's just the way it is. It's hard to win. There's not a lot of difference between these teams, Kyle, even though there may be a 20-point difference in the standings. Really, when you look at the roster of the Ottawa Senators, this is a young team. They got some really good players. They paid money to get Linus Olmark. He's a former Vezina Trophy winner. He's a good goaltender when he's playing well. They've got Kachuk is not playing at 100%, but they've got Stützle, and Pinto is playing well, and they've got a number of good players. This is going to be, no matter how it plays out in Game 6, it's going to be another close game. So, with that in mind, you've got to be ready to play, and play with urgency, and play with passion, and play with the joy that you have to play this game to begin with. Because if you don't have that joy and everything overtakes you, that's where the mental part of the game, you end up, your feet get slower, everything slows down. Play with passion, play with joy, have a plan, be ready to play when the puck drops.
Yeah, it's very easy to forget the NHL of all the 4 major sports probably has the greatest parity. So team 1 through team 8 in the playoffs, they're very, very close. Those points in the standing, those come down to early season streaks or badly played streaks. The parity's quite good in this league. So speaking of the league, let's look around a little bit. New Jersey and Carolina, they're in overtime right now. It just started. It's 4-4 there. Vegas is up 2-1. Let's look ahead to tomorrow night's games on the slate. Obviously, Montreal's into Washington, and Washington in the exact same position the Leafs found themselves in tonight. They're playing a scrappy young team that's early in their development cycle. They play fast. Washington wants to put their foot on Montreal's throat tomorrow night, don't they?
Yeah, they got to finish them off. I mean, I thought, they really did a nice job in the third period of game number 4, right? Because the Canadiens had won Game 3. They had the lead going into the third period. Tom Wilson delivers a thunderous hit. I mean, if there was ever a check that could be called thunderous, it was the hit that Tom Wilson put on Carrier, and then the puck eventually went down the other end. The Capitals scored. They went on to grab the lead later and win the game. So, they're on home ice. They're in the same position as the Leafs. Can they finish off the Canadiens? The 2 games they played in Washington were both close games. One went to overtime, and one was a 1-goal game down to the final minutes until an empty netter. So that'll be the challenge for the Capitals, but they look like they have a little momentum right now.
Yeah.
And they were lucky. Logan Thompson got hurt in Game 3. He was able to come back and play in Game 4, and he's been pretty good for them. So we'll see. Extra day off there between Game 4 and 5. So that's probably good for the Montreal Canadiens as they look to kind of regroup and get ready for an elimination game for them.
Looking down into South Florida, does Tampa Bay have a chance of coming back in the series? Because Florida seems to be clicking.
Well, I mean, they were right there, with a 2-1 lead in the last 4 minutes of the game last night, Kyle. And if they could just finish that game, the series is tied, headed back to Tampa. And, as we've subsequently found out, Aaron Ekblad got suspended for 2 games. So
the most rested player in playoff history.
Yeah, I know. He had 20 games. He came back and played, and now he's suspended again for a couple games. But unfortunately, they couldn't finish it off, and that's the Florida Panthers. They're the defending champions. They have a very deep roster. They've added some really good pieces to their team, and they're just hard to beat, and they're going to be hard for anybody to beat. I think the Lightning will give it everything they've got. Certainly at home ice in Game 5, and I don't ever like to count that team out because they've got a lot of that's a team that won 2 cups and went to 3 finals, but It's a little bit of a different roster now, and they got their work cut out for them. I mean, they've got to win 3 games in a row against a very, very good team.
Speaking of narratives that teams just can't shake, Winnipeg Jets right now, Hellebuck,
Yeah.
they're doing that thing again in the playoffs where they come in as the best team in the NHL or one of the best teams in the NHL, and they look different. They've had good games in this series, but they're struggling right now. They're not playing their game. Hellebuck's not been super sharp.
Yeah, the Toronto of the West, right? The Winnipeg Jets. That same story, really. I mean, they've got some high-end players. In the case of the Jets, they've got a great goalie who's going to win his 3rd Vezina Trophy this year. That yet, when the calendar flips into the playoffs, it seems like he just loses his way. And he was pulled in back-to-back games in St. Louis. Now, to be fair, the Blues have played very good since the Four Nations face-off. They've been one of the best teams in the league. They've won now 14 consecutive games on home ice, so they're incredibly difficult to beat at home. For the Jets, they're a good home team, and if they win their home games in this series, they'll win the series. So they won the first 2. They got the extra day off before they get together again. They're getting Gabe Vilardi back in the lineup. They've got to just get back to their game, and they've got to hope that Connor Hellebuck can kind of pull himself up by the straps of his goalie pads and give him a really good effort. So it'll be really interesting to watch that game 5 because, again, it's the same thing as we see in Toronto, the narrative of the past, at least for those of us who cover these things and who document them, right? And for the fans who have watched it, it's on everyone's mind. It'll be up to the players to put that out of their mind and focus on the here and now. We'll see if they can do that.
Well, it's a night of discussing narratives, and the narratives certain teams just can't shake. Once again, the Toronto Maple Leafs lost 4-0 to the Ottawa Senators, missing out on yet another chance to put them away, win the series. Now 1-13 in series clinching games since 2018. Listen, it's tough to harp on them, but the truth is the truth. The stats is the stats. They need to put their foot down and try and win this game. And we will be back live after Thursday night's game, whatever happens, seeing if they can move on to the second round to face one of those great South Florida teams or whether they're coming back home for a game 7. Once again, for Toronto Sports Rush, brought to you by the Brett Rivers Networks. My name is Kyle Andrew, joined again tonight by Mr. EJ Hradek, the lead analyst for the NHL Network himself. We'll see you again soon, folks. Thanks for watching.